Again, we're going to be on Hebrews 11, verses 1 through 3, and then verses 8 through 16. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. For by it the people of old received their commendation. By faith we understand that the universe was created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things that are visible. Verse 8. By faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance, and he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. By faith, Sarah herself received power to conceive, even when she was past the age, since she considered him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, were born descendants as many as the stars of heaven, and as many as the innumerable grains of sand by the seashore. These all died in faith, not having received the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar, and having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. For people who speak thus make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been thinking of that land from which they had gone out, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks so much, Jordan. It is really good to be back with y'all today. Similar to what we did last week, let's take a few minutes here at the start for some stillness to sit with God. For many in our church, this is the only time in the week where you may not have inputs. And so, yeah, it's really important that we take a chance just to connect with God in the quiet. And Joelle did such a great job explaining this at the stand is like attacking me. She did such a great job explaining this at the start. It's not, the point of this isn't emptying of the mind. It's not let me get super in touch with my inner feelings. At the same time, how we come in, whether you feel hurried, distracted, grateful, whatever, that's how we receive from God or not. So let's all just take a moment in the quiet, and maybe you can just say something like, God, you're here with me. Here's how I'm coming in right now, and just name it in a word or two. Will you meet me as I am? Let's just sit with the Lord for a minute in the quiet, and then we'll jump into the passage. Well, today we begin a new series. It's called Credo, Ancient Truth, Present Love. And what we're doing is, we're looking at core doctrines, essential beliefs that Christians have held since the earliest church, as summarized by Jesus, the New Testament, and the earliest creeds, such as the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed. And a question you may be asking is, why are we doing this? And many reasons. We'll give two today. So first, as we think about ancient truth, so we currently live in a world of noise. This is the first reason why we're doing this. Amplified by the internet age, where everybody has a microphone and a hot take. And it can be really easy to become confused on what is Christianity. This problem is amplified even further by the politicization, is that how you say it, of the faith, right? Like tying Christianity to one of our two parties are saying, well, you can only be a Christian if you vote this way, think this way. We view Jesus and the church through our politics, and we're all affected by this, whether we think are or not the other way around. And so Christianity has become very muddied. And so what we need some kind of rope. Like we need clarity on what is Christianity, what does following Jesus look like. And I think about, if you've ever seen that old show called Little House on the Prairie, there was an episode, it was in the late 70s, Robert, I'm sure it's a favorite of yours. There's an episode called Blizzard, and there's this huge snowstorm, and the dad, Pa, he attaches a rope from the house to the barn so that he and the kids can find their way through the blizzard to the barn, feed the animals, and then make it back home safely. And that's what we need. We need a rope to find our way through the blizzard of noise home. And our rope is the New Testament, what we're going over, the core beliefs of Christianity as we see in the New Testament and the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed. So we're trying to cut through the noise. That's the first reason, looking at this ancient truth. That's our rope. And second, you notice the second half of the title is present love, because the aim of biblical belief is never being right. It's certainly not to be superior toward people in or outside of the church who don't believe as clearly as we do. It's not even about certainty, which we'll see later today. The aim is always love. And so as we grow in our knowledge of the Lord and the Bible, if our delight in God isn't increasing, if our affection toward people, especially people who make life difficult for us, if that isn't increasing, then we've missed it. And so today, how we're starting as we look at this series on belief is belief. We're looking at the nature of belief. Credo, it means I believe. And the Apostles' Creed begins with I believe. The Nicene Creed begins with we believe. We getting at not just the geographical global nature of the church, but across time, what unites us as believers, right? So I believe, we believe. And this was deliberate when the early church put these at the start of the creed, because the Bible means something specific when it talks about belief. It's never just cognitive assent. It's a lot more than that. And so today we're going to look at we're heading into a series on, like, what do we believe? Let's look at the nature of belief. And today I thought we'd do this by going over common myths about belief. And so by looking at misconceptions on belief, we can shed light on what biblical belief is. We're certainly not going to cover all of it, but we'll go over a few key things today. So, ready? Myths about belief. Number one, first belief myth. And the first myth we're looking at is this idea that some people have beliefs and others don't. Some people live by faith and others don't. You see in verse 1 where it says, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. This word assurance, now faith is the assurance. Translation for that, the word for that is actually substance or foundation. So a way to read this line isn't so much faith is the level of confidence I have about my faith or my beliefs, which is how we often read it. A more appropriate way to read it is faith reveals the substance of what I'm basing my life on, right? Or my belief reveals the foundation of what I'm hoping in or basing my life on. And everybody bases their life on something. Specifically, every single person bases their life on things they can't prove. Right? Notice Hebrews goes on to say conviction of things not seen. This is true not just for those inside the church, but those outside the church as well. And this is worth highlighting because in our historical moment, while currently there does seem to be an uptick of more people believing in a reality beyond the material, more and more people looking for transcendence and things like crystals and meditation and tarot cards and things like that, there's still a sizable number of people in the West who, and this is historically unique, don't believe they have beliefs, right? So this may be you in the room, but where you may hear, this is you, where you say something like, I don't have beliefs. I've never really been a person of faith, or maybe I used to be a person of faith, but I left faith behind, right? I may even admire your faith. That's just not how I operate. I'm more skeptical, operate on evidence and so forth. And with all respect, Is that an honest self-assessment? So consider these basic questions. How did we get here? What's the purpose of human beings? What makes an action right or wrong? What's wrong with the world, and how do we make it right? None of these questions can be answered through proof or even reason alone. And at the same time, every single person operates based on deep assumptions and answers to these questions. Even if you say, I don't claim to know how we got here. I don't claim to know, right, what the purpose of human being is. I don't know. I'm agnostic. I respect that answer. And yet you just have to ask, like, that works in a vacuum. As soon as you walk out the door into the real world, you're very convicted about certain things that people must be doing, things that are right and wrong, and so forth. And so here's how a number of Western people tick. So on the one hand, you may say something like, I'm a person of evidence, reason. I'm not a person of faith. I don't know if there's a God or not. I don't really believe in the biblical God, right? But it seems like we may have come here through a process of time and chance, survival of the fittest, and so forth. And human rights and human equality really matters. It's wrong to mistreat someone based on their gender or ethnicity. It's wrong to gun down an innocent protester. Right? Misogyny is wrong. Racism's wrong. And a question you have to ask is, why? Why? And it's not just that those statements, while I agree with them, they're laden with all kinds of faith assumptions. They're beliefs about human persons, about the nature of reality. It's not just that they're huge leaps in the dark that haven't been shared by most humans across time and space. It's also incoherent. As one philosopher put it, man descended from apes, therefore, let us love one another. There's no therefore there. Right? The furthest you can go is I have a strong emotional preference that it's wrong to mistreat people, right, based on gender, ethnicity, and so forth. You can say I have a strong emotional preference. You can't even get close to saying it's wrong. And yet you know it's wrong. And the world that Jesus reveals is, one, a world where every single person, regardless of their ability and what they look like, is made in the image of God. And so therefore, there's something about each person that has no weight, size, color, or shape, and yet gives them infinite worth. And number two, the world that Jesus reveals is at the heart of reality isn't material only. It's not chaos. It's a person of such love that he becomes a human being and willingly suffers pain and humiliation on a cross to die for his enemies. And if that's at the heart of reality, that is a substantive ground for us to care about things like equality, right? For us to ground things like our longing for justice, and otherwise just everyone's emotional preference. And just to say, mine should trump yours. And so if you're here and you're exploring the faith, so glad that you're here. I would just encourage you, and maybe you're here and you're saying, yeah, I understand that I have faith assumptions. I'm here to work these out. But maybe if you are someone who's like, no, I don't really have any faith assumptions, I would just challenge you to be open-minded to that. I mean, people way smarter than me show that it's just to be human is to live on faith assumptions. And just to be open to the fact that, maybe my assumptions about ways that we should treat people and so forth, right, things we've been talking about, are they actually grounded in something of substance? And if you're a Christian, hopefully there should be an encouragement here, because it can be easy to be intimidated in certain environments where you feel like, oh, my friends or my colleagues, like, I'm with them and I feel like I'm standing on this flimsy ground where I'm living by faith and I have to justify my beliefs, and they're over here, just based on evidence and reason. And is that the case? Like the ground on which we stand on needs to be exposed, and certainly not to show that you're right, but it's such an invitation to invite people to see Jesus. And here's a way that I saw this recently play out. A friend of mine who's a believer, he was talking with a woman who's a friend of his, and this woman is a woman and a minority. And she asks him from a place of deep fear and pain, hey, you're a Christian, right? Why does it seem like when I go on my news feed, there are so many Christians that don't care about women or minorities currently? And my friend, he did a lot of listening, and they have a lot of rapport with each other. And then how he ended up, when it was his turn to speak, he looked at her and first he acknowledged, like, yeah, there are a lot of Christians or professing Christians who behave this way. But second, I have to tell you, Jesus came for people exactly like you. He made you and he loves you. And second, I do have to challenge you because the only logical grounding you'll find for equality and these longings you have not just for you, but for other people like you are only going to be found in Jesus and the gospel. And would you like to come to church with me? Just come and see. You can see if Jesus is the person of substance that I'm telling you that he is. And she hadn't set foot in church in decades. And she came as she was leaving. She was like, I have never experienced anything like this. Can we keep talking? And so myth one, some people believe, others don't. Right? So the question isn't who's a person of faith and who isn't. It's what substance are your beliefs resting on? And as Christians, we can invite people to the person of substance, Jesus. Second myth. Belief is about certainty. Belief is about certainty. So after Hebrews defines faith, it goes on to give these examples throughout the whole rest of the chapter. And the name for this chapter is the Hall of Faith. People live by faith. And looking at just a couple, verse 8, by faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive his inheritance. Verse 11, by faith Sarah, that's Abraham's wife, herself received power to conceive even when she was past the age, since she considered him faithful who had promised. So among others, Hebrews gives us an example of Abraham and Sarah, people of great faith. And what's interesting is when you go back and read the story, Abraham and Sarah are riddled with doubts. So Abraham, he's given a promise in Genesis, like God speaks to Abraham and gives him a promise. And the first thing Abraham says out loud is, prove it. He's like, how can I be sure? He's doubting. Sarah in chapter 18, this is one of Kelsey's favorite passages in the Bible. She's told about that she's going to conceive and she laughs. And then the angel of the Lord, he's like, why'd you laugh? And she goes, I didn't laugh. And then the angel goes, no, but you did laugh. It's like this 4-year-old level argument. The angel gets himself in with Sarah. Right? So Abraham doubts, Sarah doubts, everyone else in this chapter doubts in some way, shape, or form. And Hebrews is highlighting this. We're highlighting this because faith, it's far more about direction than certainty. And it seems like in our environment, we have this fixation on certainty that the Bible and Jesus don't seem to emphasize. Or yes, Jesus talks about growing in your faith. The Bible does too, but the emphasis is always more on the direction. Never, how much are you believing? And when we make certainty the point, now uncertainty feels like danger. Doubt feels like disobedience. If I say I'm struggling in my faith, what I mean is I'm failing in my faith. And we also have this assumption along with certainty that faith means fulfillment right now. I think very few of us would say on paper, yes, I believe that all my longings will be met. But yet you notice here, right, verse 13, all these people died in faith not having received the things promised. I think it's one thing to say, I know I'm not going to be certain. I know I'm not going to have all these tensions and my loudest questions resolved now. But when things get really hard or you see or experience things you just don't understand, it is so easy to throw in the towel. And what I love about the Bible is it doesn't deny uncertainty. It doesn't try to dismiss your longings or say you're going to have your fulfillments realized now. It assumes it. It assumes uncertainty. It assumes tension. And so for us, what faith means, it's less about like getting our stomach in knots. Am I believing enough? Are you believing enough? Like what's my level of faith today? And it's more about, am I willing in the power of the Spirit to keep seeking God's face? to keep coming back to his stories he's revealed in the Bible, to keep letting the Lord nourish me through the sacraments and through his people, the church. Because it's much more about God's faithfulness to me and God's promises to me than my level of confidence on a given day. And that should give us a lot of hope. All right, so faith isn't primarily about certainty. It's about the direction that we're moving in. Number 3, third belief myth. Belief is about sinlessness. Belief is about sinlessness. So as you read these names, I just would encourage you to just go read through the Old Testament quickly. You'll very quickly start to ask, why are these people in here? Like in the Hall of Faith. So Sarah tells Abraham to sleep with a slave girl to have a child by proxy. Jacob, he marries 2 women, and then he treats one of them like dirt. Imagine being in that marriage. You have Moses, who murdered an Egyptian. You have Rahab, who lived a life of prostitution. You have Samson. His acts are so R-rated, I don't think I can say them from the pulpit. And yet they're in here. Why are they in here? Because belief and being in God's family isn't about our moral track record. It's about how God's mercy and kindness isn't just toward the uncertain, but toward the undeserving. And I hope this is so encouraging for you. Just picture, if you will, the last thought or action that you had. It may have been visible, may have been very visible towards somebody. It may be hidden. You know, Jesus includes you in this hall of faith. And I was thinking about this in my own life. I'm in Hebrews in my current reading plan. And I was reading Hebrews 2 this week, where it says, Jesus is not ashamed to be called your brother. Put another way, he's not afraid to call you your brother, his brother, or his sister. And there have been some things, right, about me and some things I had experienced over the last few weeks that was making me very ashamed of me. Me believing that people were thinking I'm ashamed that he's my pastor. I'm ashamed that he's my father. And when I heard that Jesus says, Steve, I'm not ashamed of you. I love that you're my brother. Just, it broke my heart in the best way. And he says the same thing for you. He loves that you're his sister and his brother. And he's not ashamed of you. And along with this encouragement, there is a challenge as well. Or as we think about belief isn't fundamentally about our level of sinlessness. This also means it's not about others' level of sinlessness. And we're in a moment, right, for many reasons, where it's so easy to look at people in our church or online and reduce them to their most visible character flaw. And yet, are we going to be more judgy than God? Now, does accountability matter? Absolutely. Does God hold people accountable? Yes, he does. But his mercy and his kindness always outweighs his condemnation. And so I just encourage, as leaders, it's so easy when we make belief about people's sinlessness or how are they doing. You become bitter and resentful so quickly when they're not measuring up to your standard of how they need to be functioning, what they need to be believing, or how they need to be showing up. Or as members, it's easy to get resentful or disappointed in leaders, other members, to just leave the church because you're a sinner. Yeah, Hall of Faith is filled with sinners. And so as we grow in our beliefs, yes, we hold one another accountable. But we should also be growing in our kindness and our affection, just as the Lord reveals to us, right? Because belief isn't fundamentally about our or others' level of sinlessness, right? But about God's. covenant faithfulness. This leads us to the next myth. Belief is mainly about you. Belief is mainly about you. When we analyze our faith, I think where we most quickly go is how is my faith doing? Or if I ask you, oh, how's your walk going? How's your faith doing? Usually, what we mean by that is what's the intensity of your faith? What's the purity of your faith? What's the steadiness of your faith? How are you doing? And these questions do matter. Jesus asks us to grow in our faith. At the same time, the biblical emphasis is never on our level of faith. What's the emphasis on? And you're right, we should always look at context. And the context of Hebrews 11, the book ends. So Hebrews 11 ends, or it goes right into chapter 12. And the first thing chapter 12 says is, let us run with endurance the race that's set before us, looking to who? Looking to you? Looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith. Right before chapter 11 is chapter 10, which the end of chapter 10 says, let us hold fast the confession, i.e. let's hold fast to our belief about what the church has passed down. Why? For he who promises faithful. Who's he? The person next to you? Me? You? No, because Jesus is faithful. And so biblical belief, it's always far more about Jesus and his faithfulness to you than it is your faithfulness to him on a given day. I heard a story. I recently read a book called Rare Leadership by Jim Wilder. And he shares this story about how he worked in inner city Chicago for a while in this program that cared for the under-resourced. And so they would help people get bathed, they would feed people and so forth. And there was this woman who every day when they would bring out the food to serve people, the line would form, and this woman would just throw people with canes and walkers onto the ground, just charging to the front of the line and taking a ton of food before other people could eat. And Jim and others would, they'd try to reason with her, they'd try to stop her, and she would just act like they didn't exist, and it was just chaos. Like every single day this would happen. And then she also smelled really bad. And so when the female leaders in the program tried to take her to the showers that they had, she would shriek with panic. So Jim would just hear these screams, yells, bangs, all the above. And while he's working this program, he also meets this old man, a dapper fellow, like very sharp, intelligent, spoke 17 languages, could converse eloquently about like any and every subject. So Jim was like, find like someone who's more, normal here. And he's sitting with him on a hill and just enjoying a scintillating conversation. And the woman walks by. And Jim looks at him and goes, this woman, she is the bane of our existence. And the man just pauses for a while. And if an old person pauses after you say something, you're in trouble. And he says, that's my wife. And he turns over his hand and he had a number tattooed there. And he said, she and I were put in Nazi concentration camps. And they removed pieces of her brain without anesthesia. She was a lovely woman. She was a concert pianist. And we were in separate camps. And when I found her after the war, this is how I found her. And people keep telling me to put her in a home, to move on. I can't, because I'm committed to her. And then Jim thinks about, oh my goodness, the showers we tried to put her in, they look like the gas chambers in concentration camps. Oh my goodness, that's why as people were lining up for food, she was acting as she did, like the parts of her brain that remembered. This old man continued to love his wife when she was utterly powerless to love him back. And over 250 times in the Old Testament, the word that God uses to describe himself is hesed, which means covenant, sticky love. I'm never going to leave you. I'm always going to remember you. You may think you need to be put away. Other people may think I need to leave you. I'm committed to you. I can't leave you. And this God, he goes so far to seal this pledge to you that he gets strung up on a cross, being treated as one who's utterly unfaithful, so that you are always in God's arms as one who has always exemplified the very faith of Jesus. Because your faith is not about you, ultimately. It's not about the certainty of it. It's not about the sinlessness of it. It's not about the steadiness of it. It's about his certainty and his sinlessness and his steadiness toward you. So as we grow in what we believe, I hope that we never lose. Far more important than what we believe, and what we believe matters, is the who believes in us and remains faithful to us, no matter what. Let's pray.